everybody, welcome to tutorial number 11 in this series, Intro to Application Development for Behavioral Scientists. In our last tutorial, we modified one of the elements in our XAML file just to change its presentation, which was pretty cool. But in this tutorial, what we're going to do is we're going to be exploring how we might find more robust ways to manage just where that label is on a screen. Because sometimes you're going to be happy with it in the middle, but later on, as we add things like buttons and lists and interactive elements, we're going to want them positioned in a way that's very meaningful and organized to the user. So we do that by organizing our content in different types of containers or layouts. There are stack layouts, there are relative layouts, there are absolute layouts, and there are grids. Generally, in my experience, I haven't seen many people use absolute layouts or relative layouts. I really see people using a stack layout when things are very straightforward and they just function from top to bottom or left or right, or they use a grid, which is it's cutting up the available space into little boxes and managing your content that way. Personally, I like the grid. I think that's the most familiar of all the layout options for me. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what that might look like. So if we would go and just say, give me a grid. If we were to put that right there and drop that label in, Xamarin really wouldn't have much to go on. Because we haven't really said how many rows or how many columns are in this grid, or just how big those columns or rows are. So Xamarin is going to expect us to specify that. And what we do is just by creating an element in this grid, I'm going to start with this less than sign. I'm going to go grid dot row definitions. I'm going to close that out. And in here, we're going to add an entry that's just row definition. And let's say for this row, the height should be this star. Now, you have a couple options here. You could specify how big that row should be and have Xamarin use those numbers to make a guess. Or you could just have Xamarin infer based on the screen size and how many rows you want, and just do that math by itself. And that's what I tend to prefer. I use this star, so it'll fill it up with the space that it can. And I'm going to add 2 more row definitions. So it'll be like there's 3 rows in our grid. There's 3 rows and 1 column. We have to do the same thing if we want different columns. So if we start grid.column definitions, instead of a row definition, we could add a column definition. And then we're going to have to specify the width. And we could use the star here too for the same reason. I'm just going to add 2 more of those. Now, this in and of itself, Xamarin is able to build a grid based on this, but we have to tell for each of the children in this grid, we have to really have some entry in here to tell this element where it should be in this grid. If we don't specify, Xamarin is going to assume it's going to be at row 0, column 0, so that top left corner, like right about yonder. So what we do is we specify in all these other members here, we'll go grid, it's in a grid, and dot row. And in here, it's going to expect a number. It's important to know, if you're not much of a programmer, all these rows and columns are ordered, but the order starts at 0. So if you have 3 rows, your first row would be row 0, because it's a 0-based system. Your second would be 1, and your third would be 2. So let's assume it's in the middle, and we'll say it's in the second row, index number 1. We're going to do the same thing for the grid and the column, but let's say this is column, the third column, so column index 2. So if we save it like this, this should be in the middle row, but it should be off to the right in this overall grid. So let's launch it and see if it builds for us. All right. It looks like it put it in that little box in this tic-tac-toe-ish looking grid we built. So that looks pretty good. To make this a little bit clearer, why don't we change the background color so we can clearly see what's back there. Background color. It's black. Let's rebuild this real quick. It's either background or background color. Let's see what we got. Oop, background color equals black. That's probably not a great sign. All right. Let's say background color is green. Maybe we'll make our grid, the background of our grid, black. So background color of the grid equals black. And we will rebuild that. Building. All right, that built pretty well. Let's send it to our emulator. All right. So we see that our whole grid is colored black, and our label is green and black. But this label looks like it's not taking up all the space that it could. It looks like it's going as wide as it can because it needs as much room as it can get. But vertically, it looks like it can go more. And that makes sense because if we look at our horizontal and vertical options, it just says put it in the center. It doesn't really tell it to grow. What we're going to do is we're going to say center and expand. You know, let's do that for both of them. So what this will do is say put it in the middle and keep growing until you can't grow anymore. And let's see what happens. Maybe I grew a little bit, but not so much. Alright. In our next tutorial, we're going to be exploring how to put a couple different types of elements on a screen. We're going to add a title and a button to this screen, and we'll explore how we might start adding events, like when things are clicked or touched. And we'll leave that for next time. Until then, stay tuned with the website and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you guys then.